All right, so I've been doing some the Last Jedi talk and discussion, and it's been a week, not quite a week since, no, it's been a week since the movie was released, and the controversy still reign. And I think as I'm seeing a lot of fans, most fans are really liking it, but there is this small but very vocal contingent that does not like it. And again, it's one thing if you don't like it, that's fine. Um, but the ones that are really kind of confusing me are, the contingent of Disney slash Lucasfilm, but more specifically, the blame seems to be falling on Disney. Disney's destroying Star Wars, and you know, the idea is that ever since George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, that now it's being ruined, which I find funny, coming from a group of people that pretty much ran George Lucas out of the movie making business after the prequels. But that's neither here nor there. Um, but my thoughts really were this, and I don't think I'm going to get into. I should preface this that I don't think I'm going to get into any Last Jedi spoilers on this, but just in case, spoilers may apply. So, again, I always recommend watching these things after you've seen the movie. Anyway, so the idea that Disney is destroying Star Wars. Now, if you really if you really feel that way, I guess there's really nothing I can say to convince you. But I want to just say this: no matter what you think about the last two movies, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, no matter how you feel the direction of those are going, maybe it's not quote unquote your Star Wars. Um, Consider this, because this is just an idea that popped into my head last night. It could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse, and you could be a Trekkie. And think about what they did with the Star Trek universe. And who owns that? Is that Paramount or Universal? I honestly don't even remember. I like Star Trek. I like a lot of, I was a Next Generation guy, watched a lot of that. I did watch some of the old classic ones. Some of the shows after Next Generation, I didn't really watch much. The movies I thought were pretty good. The old movies with the original cast were very hit or miss. There were good ones, and there were ones that sucked. And now, but look what they did with that universe. And people will blame J.J. Abrams again, but I don't blame J.J. on that as much as you blame. And again, I'm going to say the parent company is Paramount, but I could be wrong. Um, they basically destroyed. They ran their movie franchise. They were so out of ideas that their movie franchise basically ground to a halt, and they couldn't come up with anything to do. The new TV shows hadn't really caught on as well after the Next Generation. Not to say they didn't have successes, but they were not going to make movies out of Deep Space Nine or those other offshoots. Um, so what was their big idea? Their big idea was, hey, instead of coming up with a new idea, instead of coming up with something original, or taking this universe, this Star Trek universe, in another direction with a fresh new cast and fresh new faces, maybe making some connections to the old universe in certain ways or what have you, um, but really just taking it off somewhere else. Let's come up with something unique and original. What did they do instead? They rebooted the original series. They recast classic characters, recast all the old characters, Kirk and Spock and Bones and all that, brought in fresh new actors and faces to replace them, and did what do they call it? A time travel reboot thing where now alternate universe, whatever they called it. Now I liked that first movie. I actually thought it was really good. But again, I'm not a hardcore Trek guy. Like I'm not, obviously I'm not a hardcore Trek guy. I'm a hardcore Star Wars guy. I mean, there you go. Um, that being said, I thought it was a good movie. I do find sometimes those time travel, uh, you know, things are a cop out. There's always some kind of cop out with it. And I actually found it interesting at the end of that first new Star Trek movie that they didn't somehow reset the timeline at the end. It was like, no, actually, no, all this time travel stuff really screwed up the universe, and this is where it's at now. So I thought that was a bold move. But can you imagine, just for a moment, being a hardcore Trek fan, a hardcore Trekkie, and you grew up with, Kirk and Spock and, the Enterprise and all these characters, this rich history of characters and the original TV show that led into, several films years later. And again, some of those films were really great films and some of them kind of sucked. Sound familiar? Um, and that they just come along and say, nah, 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 we're just going to reboot all that. We're going to bring all new actors, and they're going to play the old original characters, and they're going to play younger versions of the characters, and boom, done. And I'd be pissed as hell. I mean, I would be pissed. Now, think about if they did that with Star Wars. Can you imagine if, after George Lucas sells, Star Wars, here's the rights, sells the Star Wars to Disney, and the best idea that they could come up with is to reboot and recast all the original characters and reset the whole universe, reset, um, everything from day one and have it with new people. Now, I guess there'll be people that will bring up the upcoming Han Solo movie and saying, well, they're recasting a young Han Solo. Yes, they are. The difference being is that this story will take place before the events of Star Wars, so they're not changing anything in the Star Wars universe. They're telling you a story that happened in the past, and the only way to tell that story is with a new actor. Love that idea or hate it, that's the way it needs to be done. But they never rebooted the universe. They never, started over from scratch. Instead, they came along and said, all right, here we are 40 years later. All of our original cast is pretty much older. We'll use them, but we'll use them and to tell this story. And these three movies obviously now are becoming the transitional movies, the transitional story that will take us from our known and much beloved Star Wars universe of the first six movies. And if you don't want to count the prequels, that's your call. But it's going to take us from that time period into a whole new time period. Our original characters are here. All of our original characters are in place. It's the original actors. They've come back to reprise the roles. Who would have thought Harrison Ford would have said yes and came back to do Han Solo one more time? Come on. We got lucky there, kids. We love or hate what they did with him. The fact that he came back and did one more movie, come on. We got that. But they're moving on from those characters. They're moving on from that time period, and they're doing it in a way where it's not a reboot, it's not a rehash. Yes, Star Wars has always been about moments that repeat throughout, but everything has been done in a fresh new way and some fresh new ideas, while at the same time paying homage to the original movies. So we have that, and whether you love these last two movies, let's say you hated The Force Awakens and you hate The Last Jedi even more, and you're totally on the fence now as to what comes out of Episode 9, because Episode 9 is going to wind it all up one way or the other. It's going to wind up all the Skywalker saga, it's going to wind up all of our original characters, they're going to be gone, they're going to be done. And here's a real kicker, kids. Some of our new cast might be gone and done after this too. I know I've heard Daisy Ridley going on record as saying she's probably done after this trilogy. Now, that being said, if they throw enough money at her, she might come back and do some more. Who knows? But given all that, look at what Rian Johnson has now done in The Last Jedi, in the way that he is going to open up the doors to the Star Wars universe storytelling, where it can go anywhere now. They can bring in new fresh faces. They can bring in whole new storylines, whole new ideas to the Star Wars universe and continue those movies and continue that universe. It's not going to be stuck on the Skywalkers. It's not going to be stuck on the Solos. It's not going to be stuck on the Jedi and the Sith. Not that those themes might not recur in future movies, but it's not stuck there. It's not stuck in this endless repeating loop of, telling the same story with the same name on it and just repackaging it. So think about that as you watch these movies. Think about what it must be like to have had your, entire universe, fictional fan universe torn apart if you were a Star Trek fan with what they did with those movies, and realize whatever else Disney and Lucasfilm are doing with the Star Wars universe, they certainly didn't destroy it. they're certainly not ruining it. They're setting it up for long and healthy, in my opinion, future. Um, that's it for now. May the force be with you, and I have a lot more to say on The Last Jedi, which I'll get to probably over the next several days. So I'm just going to keep the commentary coming, and if you like it, great. If you don't, again, I'm not here to convince you otherwise. It's just really me getting my points of view out there. Thanks. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.